Hey, hey, hey. Whoa, whoa, whoa. What's going on here? Are we going to drop this 9,200 level finally? We will see, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give it another minute. Hey, Matt. We've got folks joining here. I've got a few names on the list that I will be going over first, and then, of course, anything you guys want to cover, we'll make time for that here. All right, John, first stream as an insider. Welcome to the club, my friend. It is Monday, just kind of getting back to the swing of things. Generally, I'll slow down over the weekend quite a bit. Obviously, I did a video on, what was it, my Saturday? But I slowed down from the charting and the posting and back to it here, back to the Monday fun. It's been, I've been keeping an eye on the markets a little bit here this weekend, but man, Bitcoin at least has been the chop zone big time, up, down, big wicks, no clear direction, still very much feels like transition phase. But the small cap names, a lot of those have been on a tear. That's where most of the fun has been over the last couple of days. Things like Icon. I was wrong on Icon. I thought it was topping out, and boy, oh boy, just continues to go. There's the 4-hour chart. Here's the daily. Yeah, it's extended, but it's still going. The RSI, look at that on Icon, over 96 RSI. And if you know anything about the RSI, the highest it can get is 100. So, oh man, good stuff. But Bitcoin's looking interesting here. This daily chart showing a little bit of a fake out to the upside, taking out a lot of shorts, I'm thinking, that were stopped out and maybe about to put in a kill candle here on the downside. I've been watching some of the leveraged metrics there, and there's a lot of people long on the Bitcoin side right now. So these exchanges, especially the ones that do margin, they make a killing when there's a lot of folks stacked on the other side, and you get the big shakeout. So it's going to be interesting to see if we get the sparks flying today here finally, maybe. But okay, let's go ahead. We got enough folks coming in here at this point, so without further ado, let's cover it here. I'm going to cover a few names here today. I'm going to do a lot of small cap names. We'll cover some of the big caps, but looking at the Node Insiders metrics here, the combined BMI, the Bull Momentum Index, the market values reading caution here on Bitcoin, and it's just kind of been bouncing around for the last few days. If you're getting the emails on the trading bot status, you've seen the 4-hour bot go long, go flat, go long, go flat, and that's because it's getting caught in the whipsaw as the price has essentially gone sideways. And so what I generally will do if I'm on a trade and I'm just kind of keeping an eye on the bot status and it starts to build a range, then I generally will wait for a 4-hour close outside of the range here, one way or the other. And we haven't seen a close outside of the range that I'm looking at here on the 4-hour chart. You've seen wicks in and out of that range, but not a close yet. I expect now that we're kicking off the week, things are kind of back into full force. I expect we'll see that range finally taken out here the next day or two at the most. But the range that I'm looking at here, a 4-hour close on either side of either 9,200 or 9,500, will likely determine the next near-term direction for the daily chart. So that's what I'm looking at there. And on the downside is essentially where I've got this blue highlight marked out. And again, we've seen these pullback shakeouts down to the downside and then to the upside. It's just been very choppy, very shaky. But this sideways action has allowed for some of these alts to continue to run and do their thing. So we'll look at some of those. But looking at Bitcoin, going to the daily chart here, the broader trend again remains in place. You've got the higher highs, higher lows starting to form. The 10 EMA, which is right below price now, around 91.60 on this daily Coinbase chart, is just below. If it cracks that, then I'm looking for the 22 EMA to hold up as support there. That's going to be around 8,900 by the time that cracks, if it does. And then you've got this horizontal support below that, which is this little range right in here, and that puts it around 8,900 as well. So that'd be your first very near-term support. And then below that, I'm going to be using the horizontal price levels. And so this last swing low that we saw here that created that nice little double bottom, which led to the strong rally last week, that's that first support zone to be watching here. That's essentially, 82 to 8,300. Call it 8,300. I mean, never closed below that. We saw some wicks undercut that, but 8,300 on the daily chart is your next big stop. And then below that, there's a couple of levels to be watching. But if it starts to really crack, I'm going to really be watching out for this pattern that I've been talking about here in the last day or two, about this big inverse head and shoulder pattern forming. Let me clear this bottom line. I'll zoom in here for you guys. And what I'm talking about here is this guy right here, right? This potential pattern forming. And we've not seen that yet, right? We got to wait for this right shoulder to start to form. But if we start to see some more pulling back, some more downside, that's what I'm going to be looking for. And if we do see a higher low form on this weekly chart on lower volume, and then the volume start to kick back in when it turns the corner, that's going to be incredibly bullish in my opinion. You're going to get this, inverse head and shoulder with your neckline, basically right where price is at now. And then above that, you've got a measured move that takes you to about 12, 13K. And in my opinion, if it gets that high, then the last year's highs around almost 14 are not going to be much of a resistance. There wasn't a whole lot of trading. I mean, if you look at this weekly chart, there was never a weekly close above 12K. We had, several attempts intra-week, but on a weekly basis, it just never closed above this level. And so getting back above that level is going to be significant. If it starts to hold, then I'm looking at all-time highs. You're looking at basically a retest of the old highs in that scenario. Again, this is a big weekly chart. This will, kind of play into the halving, which is in May. And so if it does pull back for a couple of weeks and starts to get going, I mean, that's going to coincide almost perfectly with the halving event, which will be interesting. And so, I'm always looking at what are the different scenarios, what are the different ways this guy could play out. And that's one that I'm watching. Personally, if I had it my way, that's the way it would play out, just because I think that would set up for a big reversal. I mean, we saw a pretty decent reversal on the daily chart down here, set up a little inverse head and shoulder kind of reversal, which the breakout was essentially that 7,600 level. Once we got going, I mean, look at that. It was just kind of off to the races to the next major target. We've seen a lot of chop in and around this zone here, 9Ks. So we'll see if that holds up. Now, keep in mind, let's rewind a couple of weeks. We were all watching this 9,200, 9,100 level or so. That was horizontal price. That was the 200-day moving average. And we finally held above that. And, that price, that moving average sits around 8,900 right now. And so if it pulls back and holds there, I mean, that's bullish. Keep in mind, we already had that breakout over that. We had the rally to that. Then we had the pullback, which held beautifully, and a strong break above that. So now that we've officially broken above that, even a throwback to that level would be very ideal. You wouldn't get that big right shoulder forming, but, we're still above that 200-day. So just something to make note of there in the big picture. I think the bigger picture is much more important right now than all the little near-term wiggles, just because we're seeing the potential beginnings of a reversal here. This is still technically a lower high, though, than what we saw in October. And so now what you want to see is that higher low form and then take that out, because then that just solidifies this near-term trend that we've seen here. So that's what I'm watching here near term. Those are the levels on the upside and the downside. On the upside, again, I'm probably looking at the 4-hour chart. Closing on the outside of 9,500 on the 4-hour chart sets it up for a break higher. Especially since the daily 10 EMA is now caught up. The RSI has had time to cool off. You can see the RSI still drifting lower. MACD's pulling back. So, technically speaking, we've had this little breather, this pause. There's certainly enough of a reset to set up for another couple of days of upside if it wants to get going again. And if it does, then 10Ks a pretty easy target at that point, $500 higher. And then you're looking at these highs way back here around 10.8 or so. But for now, one day at a time. And in fact, this one looks like it wants to crack to the downside in my opinion. I'm looking at, if it does break, you might get that shakeout finally that kind of spooks some people and then gets going. Especially considering all the longs that are stacked, right? Everyone's waiting for this thing to break higher. And it's just, that's just the way markets are, especially with the market makers and the exchanges. Not everybody can win all the time. That's just the way it goes. But while Bitcoin pauses, some of these other names are finally coming to life. You're seeing a lot of big moves off the lows. And so going back to this here, we can just very quickly scan some of the names that have been in play lately. Loom, this Matrix AI network, man, that's a name from yesteryear. Lend has been on a move already. Polymath, Tezos looking strong. MATIC having a big candle off the lows today. Icon, it's never coming down ever again. Wanchain Steam. Aeon still pushing. That one's been on the list here for a couple of weeks now. Raven Coin showing some life today. Monero still going strong. Engine Coin very strong. And so there's certainly a lot of names, but you can see here the kind of the cap, the type of cap, right? The market capitalization on all of these. These are small cap, micro caps in some cases. Names from yesteryear, man. Look at Golem, Siacoin, BitShares. Holy moly. So we'll take a look at some of these guys here, but it just kind of gives you a feel for the market, right? And definitely there's some larger cap names on the list, but it's a lot of the small cap, which gives me a little bit of pause because sometimes that tends to be the last group to run before you get a general correction. So just something to watch there. So let's get to it. Let's look at a few of those here, and then we'll get to it here. What does the histogram, the divergence on the histogram mean? Let's go back to that before I leave the Bitcoin chart here. So on the daily, there's a slight divergence, yeah. It's, and I use both the RSI and the MACD as divergences, and to be honest, the RSI divergence is generally a stronger signal than the MACD. Sometimes you'll see it in the MACD and it doesn't really turn out to be much, but when it's very significant, then I pay attention. Like if this first histogram candle was way up here and these last ones were barely in the green, that's a little bit more significance. But to your point, yeah, you can argue there's a small divergence from here to here. RSI is not showing it. The histograms kind of are, but I use both. If I see divergences in both, then that's a stronger signal. This is kind of a, definitely worth watching to make note of. And it's showing up in the bull momentum index. You can see it here. The daily is at 65, which is kind of neutral. Below 40, it turns red, so that's kind of the bear zone. So it's kind of been in this neutral zone coming off of the highs. And that tends to happen when you see the price go sideways for a little bit, just because a lot of the indicators that are used to create this bull momentum index, they become neutral, right? And so that's why you're seeing that kind of yellowish. So good catch there. All right, let's go. I'm going to start with one of the bigger cap names first, and then we'll look at a bunch of those because ETH BTC is finally breaking out of range here. Been watching this one. This one's looking good. Let me go to that 4-hour chart here. It was sitting tight for a long time, and it's finally pushing higher, sitting tight. I like this one right now. I'd prefer ETH over BTC here in the near term as a potential catch-up play. We've already seen some pretty good catch-up plays here last week. We saw Cardano last week, very strong. EOS has been strong. Even, Tron and Nano were kind of, or not Nano, I read your comment. Tron and Ripple were kind of coming off the lows there. So like an ETH here, we've already seen a little push here out of this big range that we were seeing. That was a resistance around 195, 196. Big strong candle above that. It's pausing, taking a little bit of a breather, looking like a bull flag to me. But of course, Bitcoin's going to dictate how this party plays out here today. But definitely could see some rotation out of Bitcoin into some of these names that have lagged a little bit, especially the bigger caps. So watching ETH BTC there, I think it looks really good. ETH USD, it's going to look a little bit more mixed because of Bitcoin. So for example, if Bitcoin decides to crack below 9,200, you'll see this one pull back maybe to 182, 178, depending on how strongly the BTC pair holds up. But definitely one to watch here. I think it's a top watched item for me this week here as a potential catch-up play here. Some of the other names that are in the bigger cap list, EOS tightening up, continues to look good. It's been on a run. Let's go to the daily chart on this guy because this one I think is a better one to watch the big picture. Remember, and I'm sounding like a broken record now. I've been talking about these big bases here showing up over the last several months, and EOS just continues to look good here, trending higher on the moving averages on the daily chart, but it is finding a little resistance here above 4,500. So one to watch, right? Don't want to see this one turn into a double top, but if it pulls down a little bit, then it could be the makings of an ascending triangle base at that point. You know, you have this big run, you've had a higher low here, you've had another run. If it pulls back and makes a higher low, then that's going to look real positive there and sets up for a big breakout over this resistance here at 4,600 sats. Then at that point, you know, you've got a pretty good run up to around 5,500 or so. So EOS, you know, definitely one to be watching. It's shown really good relative strength versus Bitcoin. Kind of pausing here again. 4,500 seems to be where the sellers are showing up near term, but again, this is also just a breather. So getting back over 4,600 looks like a breakout on that daily chart. Going back to the 4-hour view, again, you can see how this is just starting to coil up. So if you're looking at the shorter time frames, you know, watch this lower trend line here. Then again, on the upside, same level, 4,600 on the EOS chart there. But has been a leader here as of late. I would not lose track of that one because that one's kind of leading the way up. And I think the broader altcoin market, let's take a pause and look at that. I talked about the BTC dominance chart here, and the broader altcoin market looks to be reversing, right? With the big cap names leading, of course. But if you look at the BTC dominance chart, you know, we had a pretty good shakedown from that here in mid-January as names like Bitcoin Cash and EOS and some of those were taken off versus Bitcoin. And we had a little bit of a pause, almost a bear flag type of look. And now it looks like it's trying to break lower below that 66 level. If it does, you know, this was last support back here. And you can see a pretty good leg to the downside, which would translate into alts showing some life, right? Alts outperforming on the way up or down, depending on what Bitcoin does, but still the BTC dominance coming down further, which would make sense. I mean, considering where it's come from, look at it's come from 36 and over the last year and a half went to 73. You know, in my opinion, it's due. It's due for some more pullback. I think we'll continue to see the altcoins have some nice reversals versus Bitcoin. So I'm looking for a BTC dominance closer to 61, maybe even 60. And which alts lead the way in that scenario is anyone's guess, but that would be ideal all around. So definitely one to watch here. The BTC dominance chart looks like it's maybe about to spike lower here, but you know, I don't really trade this per se. I look at the individual names, but I do keep an eye on this, and you know, it kind of gives you some clues as to the overall structure of the market, what's better, Bitcoin or the other names. So back to the other ones here. So we looked at ETH here. Let's go with some of the big cap names first, and then I'll cycle through the smaller cap names pretty quickly. So Icon, never coming down ever again. Man, what an incredible move versus Bitcoin. Just pretty much straight to the next target. Look at this target back here, right? Once it broke out, I mean, this didn't look back. You were kind of over, what is that, 3,000 sat. You're kind of just in no man's land. There's a big gap right there. Not a lot of trading was done. It was a quick move down, so you're seeing that quick spike higher into that zone. And the next major target's around 4,200 on the BTC pair, and you're basically almost there. But what a move it has been. RSI again is way up there. But you know, this could be the early beginnings of a broader reversal in the alts. Again, keep in mind where they've come from. Will it ever hit the old highs that we saw in January of 2018? I doubt it. But even a partial ways up is a significant percentage move. And you know, if it's can pause here and take a breather, this sets up for a multi-month run to potentially this next major target around 8,800. So that'd be nice to see. But definitely extended near term. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you're on it, ride it. If you're not, I'd be very cautious about chasing it at this point. You know, next major resistance is right there on the USD pair. That puts it at around 40 cents basically, which you're very close to. But what a move it has been. Quick spike higher. Looking at a few others, let's go. There was a request for Tezos. We'll look at that one here because, man, that's had a nice reversal off the lows. Let me go BTC pair first. And not the lows, but the most recent pullback we saw here. So Tezos was on a little bit of a run here. Where was it? We saw it here versus Bitcoin, had a nice little steady climb, higher highs, higher lows, and then it started to pull back. And then over here the last few days, put in a little bit of a base here, and look at the breakout that we saw over the weekend. And then the volume just came in and boom, off to the races yesterday, and very quickly just blew right through those highs, up 20% here as I speak from that point. And so very nice reversal on Tizo as it was setting up. You started seeing the trend slowly turn, and once it cleared 1800 sats, then it was just pretty much gone at that point. What I would do is if you like this one, again, I always hesitate to chase the long green candles unless you're playing it really tight, but the volatility appears much riskier because a normal pullback could very quickly pull it right back to here. So ideally what you look for are these little pauses like this, where it kind of just sits tight, goes sideways, volume dries up a little bit, still above the moving averages, and then that sets up for another break higher. Or you look for the kind of the drift lower into moving average pairs, that sort of thing. Then that makes for a better risk reward entry, especially if the volume starts to really cool off on those pullbacks. But going to the daily chart, this was a solid breakout, and so if you can almost call this an inverse head and shoulder here. It's a stretch, but you can say maybe that guy, you've got this guy, you got the pullback. Either way, you've got this neckline here, which was your breakout points. If you're going off of that, let's see here what a measured move would look from here. Then your next target would be, you take that out to the breakout point, and you're looking at just slightly above where we're at now, not much further. That puts it to around right there. Oops. Which lines up with this little double top that we saw here in December, and so kind of retracing back to that point there. You're almost there at this point. Here's the 4-hour view of that. This support, the big pullback reversal. So nice push higher. I'd like to see another pause, pull back down to the moving averages if you wanted to get that one going again. XTZ USD, very strong. Just trending higher. The volume's really coming in. You're seeing some pretty good wicks here near the top right now, but again, the daily RSI is already pushing 80 as it breaks the prior swing high very quickly on some good volume. And USD pair, again, this one is looking very strong because of Bitcoin too, right? You got to keep in mind the USD pairs have been on a pretty good run for the last 2 weeks because Bitcoin has been strong. Even if the BTC pairs were kind of going sideways or even drifting lower, the USD side looks good. So Tizo's over $2 at this point. Very nice. A pullback to 180 I think would be a good secondary entry point to look at if you can get it. So a little throwback there, maybe a bounce off that point, new all-time highs again. So Tizo's. Let's see here. I'm going to do a couple more big caps, and then we will go into the smaller cap land. Anything that piques my interest here? Let's look at Cardano and maybe Monero, and that's it. And then we'll go to the small names there. XMR BTC, very nice breakout, pushing out of range. Has been a little choppy here next to resistance, but finally clearing, taking off here over the last 3 days. Go to that 4-hour chart. You can see that signal was basically this big candle there, pushed back, but held the moving averages and just kind of been steady, marching higher. Very nice. Monero, I thought I saw Pivx on here. Let me see. Yeah, Pivx was on the alert the other day. Zcash, while we're on here, Zcash is interesting here. Sitting real tight. This is Zcash BTC here. Sitting real tight here. Maybe setting up for a breakout there, almost going symmetrical. Interesting. Decision time. All right, and what was the other one I said? I forget already. Oh, Cardano. Cardano still looks great, in my opinion. I think it's still holding up very well. Still looks strong, trending higher, holding these moving averages. You get these little breathers, these pauses, pullbacks, and then a spike higher. Seeing another breather right now. And your next target is around that 650 mark here on the upside. If we go to the daily chart on this guy, just trending higher. What tends to happen with a lot of these names, you're already starting to see it, but they tend to have that kind of climactic push. They go run and then they get a little spiky and parabolic. And when you get that, the move is running its course from a time perspective, but from a price perspective, you just don't know how high it spikes before it finally decides to take a breather. And in my opinion, if this thing cracks over 650, you'll see a very quick move up, and you can very quickly see the mid 700s, maybe even 800, which is the next major, not major resistance, but you've got a swing high around here. So I think Cardano still looks good. Cardano USD tethers, had a little bit of a breather here around 0.055. Looks to be trying to edge higher. 6.5 is your first target there. But if Bitcoin decides to crack lower, then I'd be looking at maybe 4.8, 4.9 as that first support, and then maybe the final push over that. It depends on what the BTC pair does. I think it'll hold up well. So far, it's holding up and looking positive. So Cardano has been a good one in the last week. We'll see if that can continue here into next week. Seen a lot of rotation, right? Some names are strong, then they take a breather. You see the rotation. Others pause and back and forth. But Bitcoin, is it going to crack a 9,200? What do you guys think? I'm curious to see what the sentiment is out there. Does this support hold again, as we've seen here multiple times in the last several days? Or does it finally crack below and or pop to the upside, 9,500? What's your thoughts? Here, I'll give it some defined parameters. What's most likely to happen first, 9K or 9,600? Let's see here. I'm thinking we see a pullback too, but hey, so far the buyers continue to show up. The bull remains. $96. It's pretty mixed so far. Kabul in the house. Yeah, you could have that Darth Maul candle. That's true. It could be a very short-lived pull under 9K. The quick spike, the shakeout, breakout candle. Gotta love it. Yeah, and so the alternative is, just staying long Bitcoin and looking at alts outperforming, right? So that's another way to trade it, as opposed to looking on BTC and waiting for that to do something. When it goes sideways, it can be frustrating, and especially if you're seeing the alts run. So that's another alternative, but it's a tough call. It depends on what angle you're coming in from, because as we've seen before, right, Bitcoin takes a pretty deep dive and it crashes the altcoin party too. All right, so I'm going to get to the list here. Let's start going down the list. There's some requests already, and I will jot those down on the list. Let me start from the top. Engine, absolutely. Take a look at that bad boy here. Let's see, I'm going to look at Bats on my list. Mana is on my list here. What are some of the other names that are on this guy here? Loom. All right, we'll look at that. Land has been on a tear for a little bit here. Polymath. I'll skip it for now. MATIC. Take a look at that guy. WAN chain. And let me see here. Aeon. Let's look at that guy. There's been pretty strong here as of late. So has RLC. Has just been on the list for several days now. A long time. Raven. That was on my list to look at. Let me see. I'll skip those guys for now. BitShares lists. Looks like you guys want to see some of these names from yesteryear. Civic. Stratus, S&T. Okay. Oh yeah, Nano. All right, let's start with that. Let's see how we go. And absolutely, let me know if there's more on here that you guys want to check out. I'm going to try to move a little quickly so we can get to some of those names here. And then, yeah, there's some other stocks. Riot's one to watch. Tesla. Did you guys see Tesla? Over $700. Tesla. What did Tesla be? $737. Amazing. Man, those perma bears on Tesla are just getting wrecked. There's a lot. It's amazing how many funds and hedge funds have been persistently bearish on Tesla. Just really amazes me, and they just continue to prove them wrong. But yeah, it's definitely getting overvalued. If you look at the market cap of something like Tesla, and I mean, stocks are different because market cap doesn't just reflect current earnings. There's a forward pricing mechanism. You got to factor in what analysts are thinking they're going to make in the future based on technology that's not really, driving revenue yet. And so it's a little bit different, but man, oh man, $700 Tesla. All right, let's go to the crypto charts here. Which one are we going to start with here? We'll start with Engine. Looking at the Engine here. All the gaming ones I've noticed are showing some life here. Now, this is the Engine weekly, so if it looks like it's crazy on the daily, I mean, just keep the perspective in mind. Look at the Engine weekly chart. Just like, looks like it's about to get going, honestly. And so going to that daily chart here, I wouldn't be surprised to see another retest of this most recent spike higher. And then above that, right, you've got a little bit of a wall back in here. That's your next major target. So a lot of targets along the way up. When something's coming off the lows, there's going to be a lot of hurdles along the way just because you had sellers and buyers showing up at those levels and they're underwater. But Engine, very interesting here. It's putting in a good base. A lot of volume starting to come in. Now that it recaptured, this is the daily chart. Remember, Engine had that strong move a few weeks back, and then it got added to a list, pump group list, and that had that spike higher, pulled back from there. But now that it's reclaimed that level around that 1,050 sat, it's looking much stronger. The fact that it's broken below, shaken out, and coming back up looks really good. Again, I think that's your new floor, basically, right? Anything along here, don't want to see it close below that on a daily basis. But if it continues higher, first target's 1,400, and then above that, you kind of have this gap, 1,600, 1,800 is kind of your next two bigger round numbers to be watching, and that's a pretty good percentage even from here up, right? 1,600 is about 30%, 1,800 to put it at 45%. I mean, that's a big number, especially versus BTC. So pretty good. I think definitely one to be watching here. They all seem to kind of be moving in tandem. You got Wax here, for example, has been showing some life, not quite as strong, of course, but whoops, let me go to the 4-hour chart here. Starting to gain a little bit of volume there. Decentraland is one that I personally am holding, and I'm thinking it's going to do well here in the next month or so, so just keeping an eye on this one. Finally breaking a little bit of a downtrend after holding this support here over the weekend, so that's good. Held around that 360 sat level, bouncing higher. We'll see if it can get some momentum, get some volume coming in. Near-term chart starting to edge higher, so looks pretty good here. I'm watching this one more from the USD side personally. Let me go to Hoopy's got some good volume there. So watching this one from the USD side, if you go to the daily chart, just starting to finally edge out and trying to finally take out to this 3.5 cent level, 3.7, and getting above that, then I'm looking at 4.5. Let's go back to, sorry, I'm bouncing around here. Here's Coinbase, which the volumes, by the way, on Coinbase Pro for Mana are embarrassingly low. So it's tough to move in and out with anything significant. But if it gets going here, over that 4 cent mark, then I'm looking at, basically 4.5 cents. And then above that, big target would be 6 cents for me. That'd be a pretty big target at that point. So those are the next levels to be watching on the Decentraland. I'm going to do some more videos on there, specifically going into the launch here. When is that? 2 weeks from now, on the 20th. And so I'm going to watch, I'll do some more kind of special videos, maybe even a live stream when we finally launch. And I've been walking around the Decentraland. I had the invite. I got whitelisted for that to go scope it out. And it's interesting, you can walk around the land and it feels very much like a first-person game, right? You have the same controls, you jump with the space bar, all that good stuff. And, there's a lot of possibilities in terms of like marketing and gaming potential, but there has to be more than that, in my opinion. I mean, it's cool that it's a blockchain-based economy and there's going to be wearables, but, other than like checking out the really cool 3D models and the lands that people built, I mean, eventually, like, there's got to be more stickiness to the site, because if all it is just, hey, let's go walk around and chat in this land, that's going to wear off. The novelty will quickly wear off, and if there's nothing more than that to it, it's going to be tough to get that big user adoption, right? Because think about who they're going to be competing with. They're going to be competing with the gaming industry, right? Are people going to spend hours on Decentraland, or are they going to spend hours playing, their favorite online games with other people? And that's the competition there. But has a lot of potential. It's a pretty cool concept. You can buy land, you can buy wearables, you can build stuff on there. If you're a developer, you can, you get familiar with the SDK and do a lot of really neat stuff. But nonetheless, I'm liking the project. We'll see where it goes. Loom. Looking at Loom BTC here. Big spike off the lows there. Nice little volume coming in here as it broke above 220 there. That was kind of your resistance level back in that level there, 219, 220. So there you go. Loom spiking off the lows here. It's had these in the past. You get these big spikes, just drift lower, big spikes, big spike. Eventually one of them will be the turning. And as I have often said, what I like to see here is, for these turns to finally take hold, you get that big spike, you start to see kind of a quiet drift lower, and then the big spike, and that really starts to change the tone a little bit, right, in terms of what's going to, a lot of these alts, and I'm bullish in alts generally speaking for this year. I think they're due for a nice little run. So, but Loom, there you go. Loom on the 4 hour, holding above 220 is bullish there if we can pull back here. Comment on Mana. Yeah, acquiring land, it was a tough wait though, because if you bought land in 2017, the price of the Mana token was like 26 cents. And so yeah, the price of land has gone up significantly, but in dollar terms, right, like you haven't really gained that much because the token value has come down. Well, if you look at like CoinMarketCap or something, you'll get the token value. It's come down from a lot, right, bottoming at 2.5 cents. So it's been a trade-off. I still think a lot of the land is overpriced. I look at some of the prices on the Atlas, and I'm like, nah, I wouldn't pay that. There's a lot that's overpriced. Some of them are good. All right, ETH. We looked at that guy here. What was next one? Land. Looking at land. Still going. This is the 4 hour chart of land. Look at that steady trend. Very nice. Continues to march higher there. Not really much of a pause. You get a few little candles of breather. Just had one here starting to break out higher, and finally clearing some resistance here. Land taking that 330 level out. That's a nice little breakout there. How far? I'm going back here. Let me go to the daily chart of Lend. And the last swing high was back here at 353. You're basically there now. If I drop a line back here, that was this support, that was prior resistance. You're basically there now. It's trying to take that out. You can see some quick spikes right into that 400 level though. But Land, man, Land, are they still alive? I haven't followed this project in a while. I remember they were kind of a big deal when in 2017, a lot of these lending projects, and this was at the time called Ethland. But yeah, nice little move there. Had a good little base here. You can almost call that an ascending triangle base, right? You got these higher highs, even though you had a spike over that. That was still a pretty good little pattern there. MATIC having a green day. Is MATIC done? Did it finally find a low? I mean, it kind of went flat and died for a month and a half after the MATIC candle. But showing some life here today. Maybe some short-term speculation is at hand here. Some quick spikes coming off the lows. Got a lot of volume coming in, so that's good. Took out that resistance at 210. So as long as it can hold above that on a 4-hour basis, that would be an ideal throwback entry if you can see something between here and there. But MATIC, it's got a long ways to go to recapture those highs, but hey, even a part way along the way up would be a big move. If you did like a fib retracement level, even to the 382 is way up here at 360, so that's quite the move up even from here at the 382 retracement. That's a 50%er. WanChain. Have not covered Raven. It is on the list. In fact, it's maybe 2 next. And no, I haven't covered Link. Let me put Link on there. WanChain. trying to show some life here. Nice little double bottom on WAN chain with a slight bullish divergence there. You had this good double bottom right here at 1997, basically 2000, and you had some good divergence there showing up on both the MACD and the RSI. And once it took out this little resistance right here, that was your neckline. What was that? To call it 2380 basically. Pretty quick spike, but it looks like it's just getting going. So if you like these smaller cap names, I think these ones, you got to give them a little bit more time to really play out as opposed to the shorter time frames, just because they're lower volume in those short-term time frames. Man, they move a lot, but in the bigger picture, man, you could get a couple of days of run. I think the bigger target to be watching on this one, if it really gets going, is right here. What is that? Basically 4,400, 4,500 in and around there. That'd be a big target. That'd be the major swing target. And there's, over 3,200, there's really not a lot of resistance. You kind of got this window, so you could quickly see that 30% spike. Yeah, I like it. I mean, for a small cap name, definitely keep an eye on that one. Aeon, still going. Still going. Look at that big spike higher. Very nice. 4-hour chart just marching along. Give you a good little breather right here. Little secondary entry. Finally taking that out. Then we had a little bit of a breather over the weekend, but starting to push higher again. Still going though. Hasn't even closed below the 10 EMA on the 4-hour chart. So just really showing some good relative strength. I could say it's a little extended though. I don't know if I'd be chasing it at this point. I mean, the daily RSI is at 84, so that's a high risk if you're chasing it, but definitely keep an eye on it for some pauses or pullbacks, because the strength continues on that guy. RLC has been on the list for some time here, and let's see here. That's pretty good. POB, nice little bullish engulfing candle here today. Had this 4-hour spike. Again, a little bit tougher to trade these, just they move all over the place here, but showing some good relative strength versus Bitcoin. RLC still going. Raven showing some life here today. Coming back to Raven, let's take a look at this one, spend a little time. Raven has been putting a decent base here and looks to maybe have formed a double bottom around that 280 level and finally clearing some resistance today. I like it here. Let me see here, Raven. If it can continue to hold above, let me zoom into that 4-hour chart here. I'll put the targets up here because this is your target there and maybe a fib there. All right, let's zoom in. And yeah, look at the RSI on the 4-hour. I mean, it's when you come off the move off the low that quickly, it spikes, but the volume is good. So yeah, I mean, any kind of consolidation. Whoops, let me do that. Any kind of consolidation at this level would be ideal. If you can maybe pause, put in a bull flag or something. I'd be looking at around 360s as your next target, and then maybe 380s above that here. And you've got a little resistance that it's basically testing out, but showing some good life. I like the volume. Always good to see a big move on volume coming off the lows. So Raven, I'm going to put that on the short list this week. Definitely got to keep an eye on that guy. Civic. Let's move through some of these here quickly. Civic. I'm going to go to the daily chart. Just these smaller SAT names are tough on the short-term time frames. But wow, you can almost say that was a little bit of an inverse head and shoulder that played out there. And if you don't know what I'm watching here, this is what I'm talking about. There we go. At that first low, the second low, big volume at the neckline here, pull back, rallying, finally taking out some resistance. Does it play out? Who knows? But right now, it looks definitely like it's in play. Measured move on the target here. If I did an inverse head and shoulder projection, I'd say you're looking at 360 as your next major target. And if you look left, this little window appears kind of resistance, so it lines up with that. And then above that, the prior highs at 500, but that's a big percentage move. But hey, showing some life, a lot of volume coming in here. I've another project that I've just not followed lately, but Civic back to life. It's funny to see so many of these these are now officially old school names. To see some of these old school names on the list here. I mean, you got Golem, showing some life, and Siacoin. It's like, what is going on here? A lot of these old school names, man. Let's see here. We'll do Nano, VTC, Link, and then Tron here. Let me do Tron real quick. Tron, still edging up slowly. You know, just kind of starting to get going on the daily chart. I think it's definitely worth watching. TRX USD looks much stronger because of Bitcoin, but still looking good. See if it can finally crack that 2-cent mark. Nano had a big move over the weekend off the lows. You can call that a little double bottom that played out. Let me move that there. So you had your first low here, your second low there, and then the neckline was basically that 830 sat level. And so on a double bottom, a lot of times you'll get that throwback to the neckline, maybe slightly below, but that's what you want to look for. If it starts to bounce off there, then you get a secondary move. There's two ways I like to trade the double bottoms. If it looks like a strong double bottom, generally I like to get in before it actually breaks out. So I like to get in here like 2 or 3 candles after the right bottom is formed, and then catch that. And what I'll tend to do is when I trade a double bottom is I'll generally start scaling out after it breaks out, take some profits there, and then I look for a throwback to maybe add back in, or I let the rest ride. Just depends on how strong of a double bottom it looks. But that's what you could be seeing on this guy here. Again, broader trend. You're still very much fighting this momentum to the downside, right? Look at the big picture. This is the daily chart. I mean, it just basically made new all-time lows here recently. So it's not exactly in a bull trend, but near term could be a good reversal setup here with a double bottom play to the upside. So if it can bounce from here and start to go higher, then I'd be looking at this zone again back here as a potential target. So that's a pretty decent size move. Nano, not bad, not too shabby. Again, micro cap. What is the market cap of something like Nano these days? Man, those are so tiny. Let's see here. We'll do a few more real quick here. Did you guys ask for Vertcoin or VChain? I think I wrote the wrong one. I don't think anybody asked for Vertcoin. I hate that wick on VChain there. Let's just do dollar because that one looks better anyway. So VChain dollar looks like it's about to edge out. This one looks really good here. I've been watching this lower trend line, just continues to march higher there. And that's your line in the sand, right? Because the way this setup is, you have this like little double top that we saw form in November, December, and then it's just kind of been wedging higher. But you could also argue this is like a little ascending triangle base within this because it's going more sideways than up. But this lower trend line is significant now because following this little double top back here, if that lower trend line cracks, generally that's a very bearish break, and then you'd be looking at a pretty quick drop down right from there. So at least to retest these lows. But right now it's actually looking pretty strong, so I'd be keeping an eye on that one on the daily chart. Looks good. Looks like about to bust out of there. So VChain USD is probably the pair I'd watch. But that's going to follow Bitcoin a little bit more closely. So let's see, Bitcoin trying to get back over that 9,300. We'll see. Just range bound at this point. Link. Chainlink. This one's tough. This is a tough one here. Versus BTC. Hasn't quite outperformed. It looked last week like it was about to get going here. I was watching this one on the pullback, and I thought this is a nice little drop, and then a pop there. So I still like it here, just because the higher highs and higher lows are in play. But now that you've had this break and then this 4-day pause above the moving averages, this is where you want to see it hold. Ideally, this is where the buyer starts showing up and you get that second leg higher. So if it breaks below, call it 2,900, it looks bad to me. But I think Link looks good for now, but it needs to show some life here. Yeah, we looked at Tesla just a little bit ago. Tesla, man, over $700. Is it doing something crazy? Let's see here. Still going. Still going. Eventually those bears will be right, but for now, yikes. The short sellers are getting smashed. All right, let's see here. Let's do a couple more. Looks like we've got some requests, and then we'll call it a stream here. Riot. Got the Riot blockchain here. And just so I'm clear, personally, like the whole blockchain focused stocks and the crypto stocks, I'm not that quite bullish on them, to be honest with you. But I'd rather go with crypto directly. But here's Riot. I mean, it's still very much in a downtrend. For a while, Riot would follow the price of Bitcoin. I remember it would, when Bitcoin had a strong weekend move, Riot on Monday would be a quick spike higher. But, look at the bigger picture here. There's just much more in play here than the price of crypto when it comes to these names, right? It's the overall market forces. Can they actually capitalize on that, monetize it? What's their revenue stream like? All that plays bigger factor in owning these stocks, because the alternative is always, do you own the underlying commodity directly, right? It's like buying a gold stock or an oil stock, and the price of gold goes up. Not all stocks go up. Most of them do, but not all, because some of them just have better business models than others. And so that's something that you got to factor in. A little bit more in play. Then you've got the people factor, right? Is the CEO good and all that good stuff. But for now, I mean, the stock is, if it can start to get back over that $1.60, even $2 mark, turn this corner, that'd be much better. How's it look on the weekly? Is there a divergence showing up yet? No, not quite. All right, let's see here. We did Icon at the start here. Let me do some of these other ones. 0x. 0x was one that I pointed out over the weekend. That was certainly one to watch here. I'm thinking it's a potential catch-up name, just like Link, definitely in that same camp. You had that high and then pulled right back. It's still holding the 22 EMA, but if it breaks below today's swing low at 20, call it 25, and closes below that, it doesn't look quite as positive anymore. I want to see this guy push from here. This is where you want to see it start taking off. So, if I was interested in trading this one here, then I'd probably jump on early with a very tight stop and get out of the way if it cracked. That'd be me. Otherwise, I'd wait for some more upside confirmation and then wait for the momentum to start kicking in. Icon. Yeah, Icon's, it's still going. It's extended, though, on the daily. Honestly, I thought over the weekend it had topped, and then the last 2 days just kept going. RSI of 95. Holy moly. Good stuff. Verge. Verge is a name from yesterday. I think we looked at this one during the last stream, and I wasn't quite interested. It just still looked weak. Here's the daily. Maybe it's finding a little double bottom here. These low sat names, though, percentage-wise, they move up and down very quick. So Verge, if you're liking Verge, if it starts to live above that 46 level, 48, then yeah, maybe you can get a retest of the highs up here at 60s. That'd be a big move. ERD. Maybe double bottom if that's what you're liking here. And you got this first swing low back here, and it's retesting it, trying to turn the corner. So yeah, maybe needs to hold 14 sat. Then I'd be looking at a retest of this resistance here. This is the big wall right there. 33, give or take. Let's pop back over here real quick here. We looked at a lot of these names today. A lot of small cap names. Of course, the bull momentum index is flashing caution as the price has just gone sideways. So, give this a little bit, not less weight, but just you got to understand how it plays out. The trading bot is also getting whipsawed here a little bit with long, then flat, then long, then flat. So, daily has still remained long since a week and a half ago or so, but we'll see if that can continue. Let me see any alerts that we've missed here coming in. I didn't look at XRP. Let me look at that guy there. I'm going to take these guys off. What's on the move here today that we haven't seen? Waves. Okay, we'll look at that. Loom. We looked at MATIC. We looked at Tezos, Engine, Monero, Aeon. A lot of these names already. Let's go look at Waves. My messy marked up chart. Look at that. I was pointing out a a bearish divergence here the last time we looked at this guy, and that's exactly what played out. See this lower high on the RSI, lower high on the MACD histogram as this guy pushed up, and once it broke below that blue line, whoops, it was down quite a bit. How much did it drop after that? Came down about 30%. So let me clear that stuff. But it is showing some life here in the last couple of days, trying to reclaim